recently had the chance to sit down with Bob Iger. He's the chairman and CEO of the Walt Disney Company. He's got a new book out called The Ride of a Lifetime. The proceeds from this book will be donated to educational initiatives aimed at fostering more diversity in the field of journalism, something that is greatly needed for certain. Take a look. All right, Bob, first of all, play with the open hand. I love this book, and I loved it because I love business, but I also love decency and respect. And throughout it, those two themes do dominate. The people who show respect and are decent are winners in this book.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for reading the book, and thank you for pointing that out. Yes, I think treating people with respect and being decent goes a long way in terms of a person's success and in terms of a company's success. Companies that value their people, that respect their people, that are decent, are typically successful companies.
You seem to treat everybody the same. I'm not kidding. The employees are treated the same way as Steve Jobs is, treated the same way as the great Roone Arledge. It just seems to be a theme of how you treat people.
Look, I started out at the very bottom, an entry-level position, $150 a week employee. Worked my way up over all these years, now with the company 45 years, to have the opportunity to run this great company. I still remind myself of who I was when I started, right. And I try not to lose sight of the fact that while my title has changed, that I haven't really changed that much as a person. So I feel it's important to have empathy and to relate to other people who are in similar positions that I was in along the way.
And yet at the same time, someone who we think is cantankerous, someone we think is tough and unrelenting, Steve Jobs, seems to have crafted a relationship more than a friendship with you. Tell us about it, because I don't know anyone else who had it.
Well, first of all, I think you can be fair and decent and still be tough at times. You have to make tough decisions. My relationship with Steve came about because I became CEO, and I thought we should put our television shows on some platform, some digital platform, and he showed me the video iPod, quaint little device with a little screen on it. That led to my posing the question to him about whether he'd ever consider selling Pixar to us, and the rest is history. He became our largest shareholder, a member of the board, something he never wanted me to remind him of. He preferred that our relationship was not tied to stock ownership or a board seat. And he ended up becoming not only a friend, but in many respects a mentor, even though he was younger than I. He taught me some great lessons, and we just bonded over a number of things. Common interests, common desire to create great things, common desire to wow people, to surprise people, which is what Disney's been all about from its very beginning.
The moment where he tells you that he will not live is a very tough part of the book.
Yeah.
It's obvious that you have tremendous respect for him. Apple has since prospered, I believe. But tell us about how special this man was and how otherworldly he seemed.
Well, the story that you talk about is one that I remember vividly. It was about an hour before we were announcing the acquisition of Pixar, $7.4 billion acquisition. Asked me to go for a walk, sat on a bench. We were at Pixar, put his arm around me, and told me that his cancer, which he had had and the world had known about, had returned. And he was giving me an opportunity to back out of the deal. Of course, I looked at my watch, and the clock was ticking loudly, and I had no idea how to react, and I asked him for a little bit more information. He ultimately gave me that information, but told me I had to keep it confidential. Only his wife and his doctor knew at that point. And I thought, wow, what an incredibly generous thing for him to do, to give me that chance to be so honest, so candid, so trusting. And of course, I decided that I would go forward. I didn't know how I would ever explain to my board or others that I had suddenly gotten cold feet when I was arguing to do this for a number of months. But I thought that it was not only an incredible moment for me and in terms of our relationship, but it spoke volumes about who he was.
Were you surprised when I'm reading it? I'm thinking, at that moment, he's going to say, and look, I need you to be the steward of Apple. I would like you to merge with us.
No, we never talked about that. We spent a lot of time in a conference room outside of his office and walking on beaches in Hawaii and other things, musing about things we might be able to do together. We never talked about being one company, but he loved Disney a lot. Right. And obviously he loved Pixar. He loved storytelling, and he loved the combination of storytelling and technology was, he called liberal arts and technology. Right. I think he said at one point that made his heart sing.
Yes.
The combination of art and technology. That's what Pixar was, by the way. And so I mused in the book, and now Steve has gone 8 years, that had he lived, and I think there's a good chance we would have certainly talked about being one company. Whether we would have done it or not, I don't know. But it's all conjecture at this point.
In the meantime, I think Tim Cook has just been unbelievable. I don't think he gets nearly the credit. You just resigned from the board for reasons. Do you think that he has continued the legacy? Because I find Wall Street thinks that there's a before and after with Steve Jobs. I look at it the opposite. I see tremendous innovation. I see so much greatness coming out of that company. You're on the board. What do you think?
Well, I don't think you could even talk about it as from a board perspective. Just as a consumer, I use those products, and I want those products. They talk about a wow factor. They continue to wow me. Apple continues to raise the bar in terms of quality and quality of service and experience and design, and I don't think they've lost the step at all. They went through a tough period of mourning when Steve went. It had to be extremely tough. I came on the board about that time, so I saw some of it firsthand. I think Tim has done a great job, and no matter what direction you look, no matter how you point, I think you'd conclude that company is one of the great companies in the world. And Steve's gone for 8 years, and yes, he founded it, and it's his company in some ways, but what Steve did was long ago at this point, particularly given the pace of change.
Absolutely. Now, I wanted to ask you about your doing things that I think are not necessarily short-term in the interest of the dollar and cents at Disney, but longer-term has kept the brand to be what it is. The way you treat people, the humility that you show, the things that you do for people who work there, which most companies don't do, and you don't talk about.
Well, we talk about it internally. Running a big public company is obviously complex. A lot of CEOs would say the same thing, particularly one like Disney with so many different businesses, so many different touch points. And you have to have your investors or your shareholders in mind, their interest in mind in most cases, and you have to have your customers' interest in mind, and you have to have your employees' interest in mind. And there's a delicate balance there. You can't falter in any one direction. And so we've tried really hard because look, the company, Disney, is known for the product that it creates, and that product emanates from people, from creative people and people who work at our theme parks, and I could point in so many directions. And you have to treat them well and give them opportunities. So we created a program that we call Aspire, where we earmarked $150 million, and it's free education for our hourly employees in the U.S., 88,000 of them. And 40% of them have signed up and said, put me in. It's free education, whether it's vocational education, high school equivalency, college degree, graduate degree. All you have to do is be working for the company. And the number of people, 8,000 are already doing this, that have come forward to me and said, that is creating opportunity for us. That's putting your employees, if not first, at least top of mind, along with your customers and your investors. And you have to do that. And Disney, too. People want Disney to be a good citizen of the world. And that starts with being a good citizen in the places that you work.
Yeah, I'm going to say it because the roundtable, Business Roundtable, getting a lot of credit now for recognizing things that Disney's done for years, that you've done for years. There are revelations in the book, and I need to flesh some out. There's a moment where you say, listen, we got to buy Twitter, and then you just walk away from Twitter. Why?
Well, I got cold feet for the right reasons.
Yeah, but then you didn't tell us.
Well, I thought we would be taking on responsibility that we shouldn't take on. It was too complex in terms of Twitter's place in the world and everything that Twitter is used for, and it just didn't feel Disney to me. It was interesting because we thought it would be a good platform to distribute our content on and to get closer to consumers, which is critical in today's business environment. But I thought, there are things Disney does well, and there are things Disney doesn't do well, but there are things Disney shouldn't even try to do well.
And that's one of them.
And that was one of them.
All right, there's a moment where you're talking about reading FDR and JFK inaugural speeches. You're reading the RFK Indianapolis speech. You're doing things because you're thinking about running for president, but you didn't.
Right. I kicked it around. I did a lot of reading. I like speeches, by the way. I would have done that had I not been kicking it around. A bunch of people came forward and said, hey, why not? I happen to have believed that America was ready for an outsider, someone that didn't come from the system. And Donald Trump is certainly a product of that. And I'm a patriot at heart. I love this country. Look, I'm in many respects, the American dream, a lower middle class kid who ended up as the CEO of Disney. by working hard. And so I kicked it around, but then Rupert and I started talking, and Rupert Murdoch, we ended up buying the assets of 21st Century Fox, and I agreed to stay longer at Disney, and the rest is history.
There's a lot of metaphors in the book. One of them I like is from my boss, Brian Roberts. You have at one point, someone bursts in, Xenia bursts in and says, they went hostile.
Yes.
And it could have been an ugly moment. And then 50 pages later, you're sharing a car with Brian Roberts. Like nothing happened. I mean, you seem to have a resilience and no resentment.
Well, I think resentment in many respects is just a waste of energy, whether it's, psychic energy or physical energy. I have a nice relationship with Brian Roberts. I actually respect Brian Roberts. There'd be no value at all in me having being resentful of him. And he's built a great company with his dad. So be it. We're competitors. We're also partners. They distribute a lot of our content. I have other things to worry about.
All right, let me talk about something that I wish you had extended in the book, but you're not political other than that moment where you're thinking about it. If you were in charge of trade, you have the best Chinese experience. I don't know how many. You said you've been to China more than almost anybody, I think, in our country. Could you solve this?
I don't know. I don't
know the Chinese.
I've managed through my role and with others to create a great relationship with the government of China and with the people that we've interacted with, including, by the way, our customers there. They love Shanghai Disneyland.
They love America.
And so I don't know. I'm not going to presume that I would know how to deal with the trade crisis or trade issues between us and China. I do think, though, that a good relationship, a relationship that is valued both ways between China and the United States on trade and other issues is vital.
Okay. All right. Now, I want to tip the hat to someone who works with me, my partner, David Faber, who you mentioned gave you a holy crap moment that I think is one of the funnier moments in the book.
Yes. In the middle of the competition, shall we say, between us and Comcast for the Fox assets, I was in Europe, and I was actually headed to our office in London. And in a car, and my phone rang, my mobile phone, my Apple phone, by the way.
Okay.
And it was David. He said, well, that's some news. Do you want to comment? And I said, what news? And he told me that Brian had thrown in the towel or they had pulled out. And then I said, holy crap. I guess I can say that on Mad Money. Yes, David was a newsbreaker there in a big way.
That's impressive reporting. I thought it was great that you gave him credit. You give credit out in a way that makes me think that it doesn't cost anything to give credit. Throughout the book, you credit people with your greatness, things that have worked. Again, tell people this is a tremendous business lesson.
Well, it's not
you
about
make people
cost.
feel good.
It's not about cost. It's about the truth. Yes, I run the Walt Disney Company, but there are 230,000 employees. I don't come close to really running the company. They run the company, and I have a great senior team. Most of the big decisions of the company are made by them. Of course, I get involved, and I'm there to support them. I'm there to challenge them. I can be demanding of them, certainly when it comes to quality and behaving with integrity. But I give credit not because it's cheap to do, because it's the truth.
Okay, that's good. Apple, bittersweet, I think, because you felt like
Leaving
you
the board?
had to leave.
Yeah.
Because I feel, look, Apple's going to have a powerhouse entertainment slate. Why isn't that something that Disney wants to be affiliated with?
Well, it was hard for me to leave the Apple board. Steve did talk to me about joining the board before he died, and because he had been on the Disney board,
right.
I couldn't be on the Apple board. It's not considered appropriate. I think the New York Stock Exchange doesn't allow it, interlocking board memberships. I believe that's what it is. But when he died, I was asked to essentially, replace him on the board, not replace him in total, but and I loved my 8 years on the Apple board. I learned so much, and I think I brought something into the boardroom too because of my perspective. We'd love to be associated with Apple. They do distribute our content and our apps. The reason I got off the board is as they got more and more into creating television shows and movies, it became more clear to me that our paths were conflicting rather than converging. And I just thought it was the right thing to do. The business is still relatively small for Apple, but it's meaningful to Disney, and it wasn't right.
One last thing that a tremendous theme throughout that the great leaders have, I've discovered, is optimism. You talk about the the negative power of pessimism and the positive optimism. I just want to leave us. I find so many people are pessimistic right now. It's driving me crazy. You have remained optimistic through all sorts of turmoil, including personal turmoil in the book, Tragedy to the Theme Park, difficult relationships with people, someone who said you're never going to advance in Disney. And throughout the book, the theme is optimism. How do people maintain it these days?
Well, I think, by the way, optimism is a core principle of good leadership. As you know, people just don't want to follow someone who's a pessimist. And I remember as a kid seeing World War II movies, and you'd have some captain or lieutenant or officer of some sort saying, okay, we're going over this hill, come on, fellas. If that guy is a pessimist, who's going to go over the hill with him, And I think if you equate that to business, it's in many respects, somewhat similar. It's an interesting world. Change is so rapid, so profound that it creates a huge amount of anxiety, in some cases cynicism, in some cases people view the world as dystopian in nature. That's actually why I like Disney so much, because what do? We manufacture fun. We enlighten people. We tell stories that are optimistic, where the future is bright, good will triumph over evil. There's value in adventure, the value of love, friendship, family, respecting your elders. I mean, I could go on and on. Well, that's Disney. In this world, what a better time to be in this business. And it's actually, I just met with 325 Disney executives in Florida, at Orlando, and I said to them, another reason to be optimistic, there are many if you're at Disney, is that factor. Look where we are in the world today.
Right, boy, we ever need it. Okay, well, that's Bob Iger. I need to tell everybody. The chairman and CEO of Disney. The book is The Ride of a Lifetime, and I want you to take the ride of a lifetime. I learned a ton. It's never too late to learn, even my age. Younger people must definitely read this. It's going to change your mind about business and life. Thank you so much, Bob.
Thanks, Jim.
Appreciate it. Booyah! Jim Cramer here from Mad Money. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube. Click here to subscribe and get the jump on my exclusives with CEOs, plus market news, investing advice, and a whole lot more.